So I was reading your biography the other day, and it was saying you did that for a while, and then you had some disagreements with, I believe, like the chief or the head trainer or whatever it was, and wound up getting kind of pushed out more or less. So I, obviously never was involved in canine handling or anything like that, but I used to do protection sports with my dogs. That's kind of how I started getting into all of this. And, a lot of times in the protection dog world of dog training, there's kind of the saying of like, cop training, and a lot of times for police dogs is like, it was looked at as like the lower tier version of like a lot of the protection sports and stuff out there. And I think a lot of that was because of just kind of limiting knowledge as far as, they have kind of like an old school way of doing things. And this is where I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, obviously. And didn't really seek to better that knowledge a whole lot past like the standard of what police canine training was. And I just want to kind of get your input as far as like when that disagreement started taking place. Was it you were trying to kind of evolve the training program and it was just like, no, this is where it is and this is what we do? Or what was that kind of all about?
Yeah, it's. I didn't know where you were going with that, and it sounds like this is scripted or something. But you couldn't have hit the nail on the head any better. I grew up, and I'll just give you a little backstory, and then we'll talk about leading up to the point that I literally get kicked out of the canine unit.
Yeah,
not like a disagreement. I'm talking kicked out.
Yeah, like
the lowest point in my life type situation. So it started with my father was a police canine handler since 1981. I was born in '83. So when I tell people I literally grew up in a house with police dogs my entire life. He spent 28 years with the City of Miami Police Canine Unit. And this is through the 80s. We're talking about the Mariel boat lift. This is when City of Miami was one of the most dangerous places on the street, man. Just murders every night, just crazy town.
Yeah.
So when I turned, there's all these little pivotal moments in my life, all evolved around police dogs. It just was like my life because it was my father's life. And as it's so often stated, especially in the police canine world, it's not a career, it's a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Because if you're a motor unit or a mounted patrol unit, meaning you're on either a motorcycle or a horse, when you check out at the end of the day, like your horse is put in the stables and your motorcycle is left wherever, and you come home and you live a regular life. When you're a police canine handler like that dog, you spend every waking moment of your life with that dog.
Yeah.
And you form a very tight bond. So anyhow, this is what I grew up with. My neighbor got bit when we were playing hide and seek, 8, 9, 10 years old. It got bit by the police dog. Why? Because we're playing hide and seek and the dog sees my friend hiding in the bushes and bit his ass. These are the things we dealt with. I saw nasty dog fights when my dad was phasing out his older dog to get a new dog. Instead of the typical family vacation, we'd go to police canine competitions all across Florida and the U.S. because my dad would compete in them.
Yeah.
And so I just grew up with that. My favorite thing we used to do, too, there was something called the Pig Bowl when we were younger. The Pig Bowl was the county, Miami-Dade County, which is a big agency, and the City of Miami. They're kind of always kind of like, who's the best? And so they would do a big football game. Mm-hmm. And those were great to watch, but I didn't care about the football. What I cared about was the halftime show, and the halftime show involved SWAT and canine and the helicopter coming in and rappelling with the dog. And the dogs were always involved, and I just ate it up. Mm-hmm. So then just here's some milestones. When I was around 8 years old, my father took me with him to work, like take your kid to work day type thing. And part of the thing he had to do on that particular day was do a little show and tell for some kindergarten class. Mm-hmm. And so he's doing the show and tell with the police dog. And typically they go in pairs. In this case, his partner didn't show up that day, but my dad's not too dissimilar than me, or I should say I'm not too dissimilar from him. We always like to put on a good show. And so he wanted to show these kindergartners what the dog could do. We're talking about a 90-pound, badass German Shepherd. He says, man, I remember it clear as day. He goes, man, the other guy didn't show up. Garrett, do you mind putting the sleeve on and go hide in the bushes? And it was, I think it was Pharaoh was the dog.
Yeah.
This is a dog with a lot of street bites. He'll come in and bite you. I'm like, what are you talking about, Dad? Like, I'm terrified. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I didn't say it like that, but I'm thinking to myself, like, huh? What? Huh? He goes, yeah, I've shown you how to do it. Just go in there and take the bite. I go, Dad, you've never shown me how to take a bite from a dog. And I'm being like really meek. And that's how foreign it was to him for me to say that you never showed me how to take a bite from a dog. He's paused for a second. He's like, I haven't shown you how to take a bite from a dog. You'll figure it out. Yeah. Put the sleeve on and go in there. But I was terrified. And the dog comes into the bushes. And I remember saying too, like, that dog was not the family pet. I don't know who that dog was.
Yeah.
He just had a look in his eye. I give the bite, as I had seen done many, many times. And these are little milestones in my life. This is the kind of things that would happen. At 16 years old, I went to do, I started doing ride-alongs with my father. And I saw car chases, bailouts, perimeters, and my dad would let me go on every single search. Again, to the point, my dad was a hardworking police officer. Like no one could ever take that away from him. But when his son's riding with him, he would just turn it up to 11. And so every night we would go out. We were getting in a car chase and a perimeter. I mean, I saw dead bodies, this and that. But I mean, first night out of the gate, we're doing a search. And I remember being up. We ended up. We pulled the dog out. There's a couple of guys bailed out of a stolen car. And long story short, we end up using the dog and we find them hiding under an air conditioner, but like not a little air conditioner. It's like one of these giant industrial ones, like the size of, it's just monstrous. Yeah. And we're up on the roof and I actually end up seeing the guy and the person's kind of concealed and all you can see is their little butt hanging. And there's this crawl space, like, I don't know, 2 feet to get to that person. And so I use the flashlight and I can see his butt and I come back out and I go, hey, Dad, he's right there. And it's loud because the air conditioner is running, so he can't really hear us. And so they asked me, I don't even know if I should say this, has the 7 years expired or whatever it is, the statute of limitations? And mind you, I'm only 16 years old, but we're up there on the roof with my father, another canine handler, and myself. And we had left the dog tied up down on the bottom. We didn't want to bring him up on the roof. It was like a big thing. Yeah. So he said, okay, so the guy's under there. We're going to get him. They had just released pepper spray, meaning pepper spray like just became a thing. Okay. So they'd just been given it. And so they said, okay, well, what do you think, Garrett? Would you rather see us use the pepper spray to get him out or use the dog? Mind you, I mean, the guy's hiding, right? He's been hiding. The helicopter's up. The guy's been hiding for 2 hours. So he's not just giving up. Yeah. So I said, well, can't you pepper spray him? And then when he comes out, bite him with the dog. Yeah. And then I remember my father's friend, the canine handler, laughing. He goes, man, he's just like you, Gordon. My father's name is Gordon. The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. So we're all laughing like, all right, let's get the dog. This makes more sense for the dog to get him because of where the guy is. So we bring the dog up. Mind you, I almost got bit in this scenario, but that's a story for another day. But we get the dog up on the roof. We send the dog in and he ends up biting the guy. Fantastic. That was my introduction to police bite work or apprehensions. And it was like every week after that, I was hooked, man, riding with him, searching with him. And as we're searching, he's showing me the ropes. Here I am, a 16-year-old kid, learning how to handle a police dog when it really matters. I don't give 2 fucks if your dog can sit for you in your kitchen with a treat. What I care about is, will your dog rise to the occasion and handle business when you encounter that armed robbery offender, that murder suspect, that rapist, when you're in the search, when it really matters. Sure. And here I am at 16 years old, like getting shown the ropes. And it's just the most amazing thing you could ever, like, I would go back to school, like just very proud. And how do you even express to other 16-year-old kids in high school, like what you just witnessed, what you just saw, some of these things I felt very, I don't know, privileged to have witnessed. So fast forward 18 years old, I start working dogs through a favor that my father did for a company. This is post 9/11. And so they're using explosive ordnance detection dogs, or EOD dogs, to search for all the material going on and off cruise ships to make sure a terrorist doesn't blow up a cruise ship. So at 18 years old, I get some kind of special security clearance to work at the ports. And I'm kind of given a crash course and then on the job training under the guidance of my father, showing me how to use dogs, all of them fully, we'll call them bite trained. These are all dogs imported from overseas, KNPV dogs and other types, Mondio Ring, competition dogs, but that were imported for purposes of becoming police dogs. Yeah. And so they all had bite work, and they all were, at this stage of the game, imprinted on explosives. So I get to use these dogs for about 2 years, but only as detection dogs. But I became a pretty good detection dog handler at 18, 19, 20 years old. Then I get hired with the police department, and then I'll just fast track it from here. I'm one of the youngest people to ever get accepted into the canine unit. I'm there in the canine unit. At that point in time, it was myself, my father, and my stepmother. All 3 of us were in the same canine unit, which is just completely unheard of. Yeah. for the same agency. And I ended up leaving the canine unit very early. It was like one of the most difficult decisions I've ever had, because I had a full ride scholarship to a college, and I couldn't do both. I couldn't be in the canine unit and have a dog at home if I was spending X amount of hours in college, like not home. And so I ended up leaving the canine unit so that I could pursue the scholarship. Fast forward, I end up becoming a sergeant. They bring me back to the unit as a supervisor, which ended up being the best time I've ever had in my career as a police officer. I was the senior sergeant. There was a lot of issues going on in the canine unit at the time, a lot. And they basically disbanded over half the unit. Overnight, they kicked out 60-something% of the unit. And so they needed all new sergeants and a brand new lieutenant. And it's now, to your point, I come in as the experienced canine person that's going to help rebuild the canine unit. And so we did. We hired a lot of great people, had a lot of work ahead of us. But now I'm back as a supervisor, and a senior supervisor at that, because we ended up bringing in 2 more sergeants, but I was the most senior one. And, you know, for anybody that knows anything, sergeants run the unit. I'm not saying lieutenants don't own that unit, but sergeants are there like handling the business day to day. And so the lieutenant was pretty hands off at the time. But what ends up happening is I start traveling and going to different conferences to learn how can we improve, because I just can't take good enough. I never leave good enough alone. There's always a better way to do something. There's always something that you can learn. Yeah. And so we would go to these conferences and I'd learn things, and I just realized, I'm now realizing through my own studies too, man, we are in the fucking Stone Ages.
Yeah.
We're talking, this is around 2006, 7, 8, something like that.
Yeah.
And here we are in 2008 or whatever, pick the year. Mm-hmm. And we're not even using damn marker training.
Yeah.
We're not even using food rewards.
Yeah.
The biggest, and I'm just going to there's multiple points in time where me and the lieutenant were butt heads. One of the big ones was that we had some old, you know, we have departmental orders that we have to follow, and more specifically, standard operating procedures that are written in-house for the canine unit. We get to write our own SOPs. Yeah. Well, there's this long-standing SOP, and I don't even know if it was an SOP or just this old training habits die hard type situation where you must use a 6-foot leash when you are searching for the baddest of the bad.
That means you got to be real close to them.
Lord, fuck have mercy.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
And I just, it never felt right to me. Yeah. But as an officer in the unit, you can't say shit. You just, yes, sir, no, sir. You do what you do. But now I'm a supervisor, and I'm like, this is just wrong.
Yeah.
This is like so wrong. Mm-hmm. I remember going to a conference, speaking to someone who's, you know, pretty good when it comes to tactical tracking. And we were just having a nice, friendly conversation about the different things you can use and what size leash do you like to run. But the industry standard at that time was, and still is, roughly speaking, a 15 to 30-foot leash. That's kind of the average you would use for tracking for a suspect, a criminal suspect. Yeah. Here we are using a 6-foot leash.
Was the mentality behind the 6-foot leash that longer than that would be potentially dangerous to civilians because the dog would be able to get too close to other people or something? You wouldn't have as much
100%.
Control? Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Yes. And so, because it's the city of Miami, we're not really tracking through the woods. Yeah. It's a very urban, very dense population. Yeah. And yes, we do have accidental bites. Not a lot, honestly, but here and there. But honestly, like a civilian, you know, getting bit by a police dog is a problem.
Yeah.
A police officer getting shot in the face because he's 6 feet away from a guy with a shotgun is a bigger problem.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And so, and just because you have a 15-foot leash, does it really amplify the possibility of a civilian getting bit?
Yeah.
Does it really? I mean, maybe marginally, but it significantly helps you. By the way, this is my old saying, and you can't argue with this. Mm-hmm. A 6-foot leash can never be a 15-foot leash, but a 15-foot leash could always be a 3, 4, 5, or 6-foot leash. Just choke up on it. Mm-hmm. So if you need to round a corner and you're a little concerned that there might be a civilian there, then you choke up on the leash. But once you realize you're in the backyard and there's no civilians around, let that leash out, baby.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Protect yourself. Let the dog work. And so here we are. It's fucking common sense.
Yeah.
This is goddamn common sense. It's not like I'm some genius that come up with this.
Sure.
It just finally occurred to me, like, my God, we've been doing this so wrong for so long. And I'm the first one that can admit, like, I have pride and all, but like, if I'm fucking up, let me know. And I try to look at it.
Yeah.
Objectively, I think is the word.
Yeah.
And here we are. I said, so, hey, from now on, and actually this is going to mess you up further. We were allowed to use a 15-foot leash. But we were only allowed to use the 15-foot leash on the more rare occasion that it was a full SWAT call out for an armed suspect that had just shot at the police, and basically like a higher level of deployment, meaning much riskier.
Yeah.
Those were, I wouldn't say few and far between, but let's call it 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 searches.
Yeah.
And so now what I would see happen is, and this may not make a lot of sense to people, but imagine tethering up a buck wild Malinois, that's 150 miles an hour, and trying to control them on a 15-foot leash when they're buzzing left, buzzing right, circling around you. There's trees, you're in a junkyard, you have 2 or 3 SWAT guys that are flanking you.
Yeah.
It becomes a fucking catastrophe.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is they would deploy the 15-foot leash, but my guys and gals in the unit looked like a bunch of fucking bumbling idiots with a 15-foot leash in their hand.
Yeah.
And so now what you're telling me is, when the stakes are even higher, when it matters so much, your safety and your precision and your ability to handle a dog is now compromised because you're using a tool that you are not familiar with, because you never practiced with it, because anyhow. So I said, starting now, you will only use a 15-foot leash going forward.
Yeah.
Now, but I never force things on people.
Sure.
In training, yes, I will force it upon you. I will put you out of your comfort zone to make you better. But if on the real search, today in training, you must use a 15-foot leash. And every day going forward, you will use this 15-foot leash until you become a fucking master at the 15-foot leash. But tomorrow, if you need to search for someone and you feel better and more competent handling a 6-foot leash, then I'm not going to make that decision for you. You choose what tool's best for you. And fucking Lord have mercy. You know how it is. People hate change. Yeah. So I got cursed upside down, left side, right side. Fuck you. You're changing things. This has worked so good for us for the past literally 30 or 40 years. This is the same tactics we've been using since literally 1965 when the unit started. Guess what happens after all the shit talking? A couple of months later, everybody and their mom is only using a 15-foot leash because they realize the beauty. They realize the tactical advantage you have. Yeah. I don't get credit for that shit. I don't need credit for that. The point is my guys and gals were that much safer.
Yeah.
This is just one issue that me and the lieutenant would butt up against, because he gave me an order. He saw me using a 15-foot leash. By the way, I'm not going to tell anybody to do something that I'm not going to do first. So I started using a 15-foot leash on every one of my training deployments.
Yeah.
But I was going against the fucking grain. Yeah. This is the stupidest thing, by the way. Like, you realize what we're talking
like leash
about.
Length of all things. Yeah. Uh-huh.
But this guy came down on me and says, Garrett, you know what the rules are. You know what the SOP state. You know what our training routine. You must use a 6-foot leash. I don't want to ever see you with a 15-foot leash. Yes, sir. And immediately go back to using a 15-foot leash like a fucking asshole. Because because I'd sit there, because I would try to explain to him, hey, but there's a lot of advantages and this and that, and blah, blah, blah. He told me, mind you, I'm a pretty experienced canine handler at this point, but I'm still going through the school. I have to go through a 480-hour school with my new dog in order to get certified. So what he told me was, when you graduate from the school, then you can use the 15-foot leash. But while you're in school, you will do as we've always done.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, get the fuck, man. So when I finally graduate and I'm ready to go deploy and go after that murder suspect, then I'll start using the 15-foot leash. Anyways, that was just one of many, many, many issues where he was just stuck in the old ways, and I'm trying to do new things and push the envelope. And I'm just going to give you another silly example. And by no means do I pretend to be an expert on this or not, but I did read somewhere that when it comes to special forces training, the reason why those guys are so good is because you're actually, don't quote me on this, but their training is so intense. There is a very high likelihood that they can die or get injured in training alone. A lot of special forces guys die or get injured in training because they want to train at an 11 so that when they hit that 8, 9, or 10 in the battlefield, they're ready for it. Yeah. And so I was roughly trying to do the same. I would make our trainings a little intense, a little dangerous, a little fucking realistic. And by no means is it like, was there a potential for someone to get shot or anything like that? But we got to bring that stress. We've got to bring that adrenaline dump. We've got to put them in uncomfortable situations so that when they really are dealing with a life or death situation, the chances of them coming out of that unscathed is increased. But no, everyone wanted to just do the fucking bullshit training of like, we call it training Wednesdays. Wednesdays is a typical training day across the nation where the entire unit comes together. It doesn't matter your days off or your duty hours. You make sure you're there on Wednesday at the appropriate time. And then you know what a lot of fucking goofy ass canine units are doing? They show up, they fucking get their car washed. They go to a 4-hour lunch. They leave early. They do one little fucking track. And then they cut out 4 or 5 hours early. And we've trained with those agencies that do that. And guess what? Their dogs fucking suck. Their trainings suck. Then, you know what our training days were like? Fucking go. Oh, shit. There's only an hour and a half left. We could set up one more track. Let's get it. In fact, let's set up 2 tracks so we can get everybody out in an hour and a half. So, you know, and I was always pushing the envelope, and a lot of people didn't agree with that. But hey, I'll tell you what, nobody ever got hurt or injured on my watch. And a lot of the stuff that everyone begrudgingly, you know, was forced to do, man, they're still doing it to this day. I created some lasting effects in that unit. You know, now you got the new guys in the unit and you ask them like, hey, so why are you using a 15-foot leash? Well, I don't know. It's just the way it is. Perfect. Anyway, awesome. I could go on and on, man. I'm just very passionate about it. And canine training is just near and dear to my heart.